I'd like to invite Alan Budney up again to present the Mentorship Award.
It's my privilege today to introduce the CPDD Mentorship Award. And before I do that, I want to thank the other folks that that nominated Dr. Stephen Higgins. Our winner this year was my friend and co-trainee many years ago, Dr. Craig Rush from the University of Kentucky, and all the other of Steve's trainees that supported this nomination with letters, etc. So I put up here, first of all, for your viewing is the list of folks that have won the CPD Mentoring Award in the past. And I think putting this up, I know this will make Steve proud, because I know he values the work, and those folks here are all heroes of the field, and now Steve gets to join that list, and I'm sure he'll feel humbled. Steve Higgins, he's our winner. Steve was my mentor. What's Steve doing now? Well, Steve's at the Vermont Center for Behavioral Health. He's a professor there in multiple departments, primarily in psychiatry and psychology. As far as training programs go, Steve has had a T32 from NIDA in behavior pharmacology and human drug dependence, along with started with his colleague Maureen Bickel and John Hughes back in 1990, and I was one of the first postdocs. More recently, added to that, Steve now has two other grants that support training. He has a T-Course grant from NIH and NIDA, the Vermont Center on Tobacco Regulatory Science, and he has another COBRA grant on behavioral health, which mentors junior faculty primarily. So Steve is involved in all kinds of mentoring. There's a total of 8 pre-docs and 8 postdocs and junior faculty members being mentored under his directorship, along with other colleagues doing the mentoring. But it's quite something, and I think it takes up quite a bit of time, maybe all his time nowadays. I can't imagine how these guys do it. Anyway, that's Steve up there in the left corner, and I tried to get pictures of all his mentees over the year. I think I missed 2 of them. I just couldn't find their pictures on Google, but anyway, faces put, I'm sure, as Steve looks at these faces, he feels some pleasure, some pain, some... you know how you feel when you're a mentor, and paying it forward is a good comment, because I think we're all doing that and feeling the same things. And here's a list of Steve's trainees. Most of them come through a NIDA T32 training program. I forget the count because I keep having Steve Holtzman's in my head. But anyway, you can see the folks, and hopefully if you're out there and I missed you, I very much apologize. I tried to be as exact with this as possible in terms of highlighting Steve's trainees. Steve's accomplishments at the training level are many, but one of the things is paying it forward, as Matthew just said, I think very importantly. And what I noted in looking over the list of folks that Steve has trained in the past is a number of people that are running training grants of their own. Craig Rush and I are both directors of training grants at our institution. Jen Tidy was a trainee of Steve's, and Sarah Heil, they're both associate directors of training programs. So Steve has passed on the commitment to training. So many more people are training in the years past. Also, CPDD service. This is a CPDD award, and we're at CPDD, and Steve's trainees kind of learned that, hey, a commitment to the people that you love and the college that supports you. And Steve was the CPD president. He spent multiple terms on the board, and right now your board includes 4 of Steve's trainees. So if there's any decisions being made that you feel like you don't like, well, they might all be biased by Steve Higgins in some way, shape, or form. So find him, even though he is trying to stay to the side. And the other trainees that are not on the board, if you took a look at them, I tried to count them up and list them, but it was kind of ridiculous. They're all serving in different aspects of the college. As far as publications, Steve has over 300 and many, many grants, et cetera, but his trainees are doing very well as well. And there's 3 or 4, I couldn't quite count on this one CV. Steve might be upset it wasn't quite in the right order and shape, and the data weren't presented very well. So 3 or 4 have over 100 publications, 2 or 3 are well over 50, and there's a bunch of more young ones that are getting right up there and escalating in their publications. The breadth of research of Steve's trainees has spanned multiple drugs, cocaine, alcohol, even caffeine. The types of research that we've all learned to do working under Steve are human laboratory studies, small n laboratory and clinical trials, and RCTs of a larger magnitude, survey research, all kinds of things have been going on that come from this training model. And who we've worked with over the time are diverse populations, people with schizophrenia, people with depression, all the substance use disorders you can think of, disadvantaged mothers, you name it, adolescents. So people have gone on to do all kinds of different work with different folks that have come out of Steve's lab. Steve's mission, what does Steve train us to do? And I'm sure when the folks that have been trained under Steve see this, they might cringe a little bit, but mostly I think they cherish what they've learned, and that is to think hard and to make things happen and follow the data. You got to get the data, you got to find the data, you got to show Steve where the data is, and then you know you're doing your job and you got something to report. And when you report on it, be precise. Steve has taught us that. He's taught us much more. My career, I believe, I owe it all to Steve. He took me under his wing. I really was not much of a researcher in graduate school, certainly in the area of substance use. He brought me in and showed me how to do it. So I am really, really honored and pleased that Steve was the winner of this year's CPD Mentoring Award. Steve, I hope he's here somewhere. There he is.
Well, Alan, thank you for that very, very generous introduction. And obviously, it's a tremendous honor to be here, but I also want to be sure to thank Alan for nominating me for this award, and along with Craig Rush, as he mentioned. And so they kicked me off as a mentor way back in 1990. And we got a lot of work done, I think, and I enjoyed doing the work. So Craig was in the lab, and Alan was in the clinic, and then we were very close in age, so we had lots of fun. We were skiing, we were doing science, drinking probably more beer than we should have, and it was a blast. And then the nice thing about getting started in a mentoring relationship like that is you get to have colleagues like Alan and those who he showed in the slides throughout your career. So that's been terrific. So there are a number of thank yous that I just want to be sure to mention. I want to thank CPDD for having a mentoring award. We all recognize how essential it is to the to our science to have it train the next generation. So, and then to the awards committee for taking the time to select winners and to have selected me, which I really appreciate. I want to I also want to mention the list of former winners that Alan showed, and he knows me well. I'm just thrilled to join that list. I also thought the list was very impressive by its breadth. You saw people from the preclinical lab. Steve Holtzman was mentioned several times, all the way through epidemiology. Jim Anthony, it was up there. And then a number of people that were very close to me in terms of impacting my career. So Joe Brady was huge. I did my postdoc at Johns Hopkins, and Joe Brady started all that stuff there. And then Bob Schuster and George Bigelow. And so to be able to join that trio is just an amazing honor for me, or to stand among them. And then Alan also made the point is very true for me, and that is the influence. So I saw George Bigelow and Maxine Stitzer in the audience, or I can see them over there. And so they were my postdoc mentors, and taught Warren Bickel and I everything about a T32. And so when we got to the University of Vermont, we replicated as best we could understand what we had just been through at Johns Hopkins. So So that's been terrific. I want to thank NIDA and NIH for having the T32 mechanism. It's been a wonderful mechanism for us, and I know at Johns Hopkins the same. And now Alan showed that slide of how it continues forward. I had the pleasure of visiting Alan's T32 last week and was just tremendously impressed. So it's a wonderful mechanism. Over the years, the project officers at NIDA have just been so easy to work with. Will Acklin, CC McNamara-Spitzna. So, yeah, I really, without that support, all this mentoring would not have been possible. I want to, Alan mentioned already, my colleagues at the University of Vermont who have been involved in the mentoring mission over the years, so 27 years now with the T32. So my dear friend Warren Bickle took the lead in kicking that off and wrote the first training award, took the lead in writing the first application for T32 along with myself and John Hughes. And so we kicked it off. Alan joined us, moved from the postdoc slot to the mentoring faculty not soon after that. And then later, Stacy Sigmund and Sarah Heil joined us, and they had been graduates of our T32 program. So I was kind of mentioning earlier the fun of having former mentees then become your colleagues in mentoring others. So that's been great. And it's continued on. We had Hugh Garavan and Diane Galima, who joined us pretty recently, and then most recently we have Andrea Volante and Allison Curdy, who are going to be taking on mentoring with us. And so I think of myself really as being here representing the UVM training program and accepting this award on behalf of my colleagues. So then I want to, of course, mention all the students, not by name, but I appreciate Alan showing their names. It's been a blast working with you guys. It's been an honor. And I'm a behavioral pharmacologist. I think Matt and Steve and others have mentioned, you know, if you're a behavioral pharmacologist, you think like, what is the reinforcer in the mentoring? When's it delivered? And so I've found that I'm like on an intermittent schedule of this reinforcement where I see the mentees like Alan, maybe an example today, where you could just see they have found their stride. And somehow, when it's your own career, it all kind of fades together. But with the trainees, I can remember where they were, and when I see them in their stride, doing good science and good mentoring, it's highly reinforcing. So for me, that's the sweet spot. That's the heroin equivalent. All right, so I think that's really the remarks I prepared, and I really am honored, and I thank everybody for making this possible. Thanks.